Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining today's demo. Transform your training with the Training Arcade, engaging, customizable, and data-driven. I'd like to thank today's sponsor, ELB Learning. ELB Learning offers an industry-leading suite of innovative software and professional services that empower businesses to unlock their people's greatest potential through customized learning experiences. I'm Alexandria Clapp, the Senior Content Manager for Learning Technologies and Sciences at ATD, and I will be your moderator today. I know our speaker plans to keep you engaged, so if you would like to interact with her and your fellow participants, make sure to select everyone in our chat box. And we will have time for Q&A at the end of the session, so I'll hold on to new or unanswered questions to be addressed then. And now I'm very pleased to introduce today's speaker. Jamie McDonald is the EVP of Customer Success at ELB Learning. And we're looking forward to learning more about the Training Arcade. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Jamie to take it away for us today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alexandria. Hi, everybody. I'm really excited to be here today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you all. One moment. Okay. So for today's demo, I'm excited to share with you a product called the Training Arcade. This platform has been around since 2017, and it has been evolving over the years with the intention that you can use this platform as a great way to add on to all of the wonderful training that you're already creating in order to make it more fun, engaging, get your learners motivated, get them to compete, be able to track and measure how effective the learning is. So what the Training Arcade is it's a game and gamification authoring platform. And the goal is that it would be your team's job to input your own content into these games. It's very easy to use. It's an extremely flexible platform. It's web-based, so everything's in the cloud, and it's also SCORM compliant. So the idea is that you can use games as a way to track what your learners are doing, make it more fun, use games for people to play solo via e-learning. If they're, let's say, inside your LMS and you want to assign them games there for retention purposes, you can use live games if you're on your Zoom or your team calls. You can use live games if you're in person in classrooms or in giant conference centers, and you can have team game competitions. So the ultimate goal is not to replace what you're doing, but to add on to it to make it really fun and engaging. So in the Training Arcade, there are really two parts to our platform. And one of them we call the Training Arcade, the other we call arcades. The difference between the two is that in the Training Arcade itself, the arcades, by the way, is part of the Training Arcade, but it's the gamification layer to the platform. So inside the Training Arcade, we have what we call game templates. And I really don't like to call them templates necessarily because they are fully polished games. And the only thing that's missing is your content. So you would be able to open up the back end, which I'll show you in a minute, plug in your questions and answers, and then voila, you have your games. And typically you can build games out in 30 minutes, 40 minutes, maybe an hour, depending on how long of the content you have. But before I dive into what those games are all about, I wanted to kind of explain the difference between games and gamification. So when you think about games, if you're playing a game, you're really immersed in that experience. And the idea is that you're focused on the task at hand and you're having a great time. So you kind of tune everything else out. So it's a great way for learners to practice with your content, but also for them to see how they do at the end. And if they don't perform well, that's okay, because games allow you to fail safely. If somebody sees that they didn't do so great on their score or their position on the leaderboard, there's a good chance they'll play a game maybe a second time or a third time. And interestingly, we did a study of 2,500 games in our platform, and we found that there was a lift of 58% in knowledge retention from the first time somebody played a game to the third time. And that's because people are more willing, if they're having fun, to come back on their own free time to do that experience over and over again. You don't often have people say, hey, please may I take that training again, or can I take that quiz again? But because games are enjoyable, people tend to want to do that. Now, the gamification piece is more about the motivation. How do you get people excited for you to spend time with your content? How do you get them motivated to want to keep coming back time and time again? And so that's all about rewarding them. And typically that's intrinsic and extrinsic rewards. So things like points, badges, prizes, achievements, leaderboards, things of those nature. And that's all built into the arcades part of our platform, which I'm going to show you. So I'm going to show you a little bit about the games. I'm going to show you what an arcade looks like and learning journeys that you can build within an arcade and all the fun social elements that you can have. And then I'm going to show you a bit of the back end and also some data. So I'm not necessarily going to be able to walk you through all 11 games that are in here just for sake of time today, but certainly reach out and we can get information to you over about all the different games. And on our website, there are samples for you to play. So before I do that, I just want to explain that when you think about using games for your learning, you can really use them in many different ways. I find that a lot of people use it for new hire training. You know, you have some new employees that just came on, and games are a great way to disseminate important information to get them kicked off in a great start. I've seen a lot of people use these games for sales training or product training, any kind of technical training. For compliance training, you know, compliance training tends to be annual. It could be a little bit dry, so games can really make that, you know, more fun and effective. And then also for events, meetings, you know, things like that. So when you think about deploying these games, there's about a dozen ways you can push the games out to your learners after you've built them. This, like I said, this is a SCORM compliant platform. So you could download a game as a SCORM package and load it into your LMS and assign it to people there. That's a pretty common way to do it. But let's say you already have courses built and you want to embed a game into a course. You know, maybe you have Storyline, Rise, Lectora, Captivate, any format that you build out your training material, you can drop the game link in to be part of that course. So let's say it's at the end of the course, you've dropped it in as a web object, then the learner would simply just click the link and the game would launch right there inside your course. And then the game is, you know, acts as kind of that assessment piece. You can email links out. Each game link is just a simple, you know, unique URL. You can use QR codes. You can have games that are run live on your, you know, Teams and Zoom and WebEx calls and so forth. So there's a lot of different options there. You can even iframe it into your internal, you know, if you use Workday or SharePoint or something else where you want it to live as a clickable iframed, you know, icon. They click it, it launches right there inside your system. So let's talk about the games now for a second. There are a great variety of different styles of games, and that's on purpose. That's to enable you to pick the right game type that matches to your performance objectives. So if you have a particular performance objective or a certain audience that you think certain games might work best for, or it's certain content or certain way you want to deploy the game, there might be different games choices for you. Now, you probably are noticing that we have Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune. Those are two licensed IP. We are the only company out there who has the official license rights to use those brand names in training games for training and education purposes. So just know that, you know, if you were to use a platform like this, you can feel rest assured that your IT team and everybody in compliance feels good that it's the official you know, game. We built them in partnership with Sony and Jeopardy Productions, so they had to look and feel and play just like the TV show. If anyone has ever played the New York Times Wordle game, we have a game called Noodle that's very similar to that, which is really well suited if you're trying to teach company lingo, vocabulary, definitions, acronyms, things like that, where you're essentially trying to give the person a question and a topic, and then they have to guess the word. So rather than it being a random word like the New York Times game, in this case, it's actually an answer to your question. We have a game called Match that is similar to like a Candy Crush style game where you're swapping tiles to find your matches. Trivia is kind of like a, it sounds like what it sounds like is trivia game, but it's got a lot of fun bells and whistles. Scramble's a game that's all about unscrambling words and sentences. Now, when it comes to soft skills, role play, situational decision making. We have two games, Scenarios and Detective, that are really well suited. So Scenarios is a game where you're going to present the learner with a real life situation. They're going to make a choice, and then they're going to go down one path based on that choice. If it was a good choice, maybe they'll keep going and get to their final objective faster. If they make a poor choice, then they might be sent back to review something else. Another thing I haven't mentioned yet is that our games do support images, videos, some of them support audio clips. So in addition to your questions and answers that you're going to be populating, you can put in lots of great visuals to act as visual aids. So it might be that you're showing an image or a video before a question. It might be that you're showing an image or a video after a question as more feedback or context or rationale. So you really can bring these games to life with a lot of different content. Detective is a game that's all about problem solving. Sorted is great for categorizing information. Recall is great for showing a learner an image or a video that then disappears and they have to recall what they saw. So it's good for memory and identification and systems and processes. And Jump is one of our gamiest games, which is really where you're not just having your learner answer questions. They are going to be jumping around. So it's a little bit of skill-based plus question answering. So I know I didn't show you anything yet, and that's not my goal. I want to get to the meat of this. So I'll show you a couple different games before we move over to the gamification. So here's Jeopardy. Those of you who watch it on TV will notice that this matches the current season on TV. Now with Jeopardy, you can put your logo here, but you can't really change the background look and feel of the game because that is set by Sony. Every game you create has a section for you to put some messaging at the beginning of the game. So this is a blank slate. So when you go in to populate your game, this could say something like, hey, learners, we just learned about XYZ topic, and now we're going to test your knowledge and see how you do. So whatever it is that you think would set the stage to get the learners to understand what this game's about, you can say that here. When it comes to competition and tracking, this section here is what you're going to use to capture who that person is, so that later you can go back and you can see who played and when they played and how long they played and which questions they got right and wrong. If they played multiple sessions, you'll be able to look at the data and see, okay, wow, they improved from the first session to the second to the third. And of course, this information is important for competition as well. So for the leaderboard. Now, I will tell you that if you are deploying this game as a SCORM package in your LMS, or you're using single sign-on, which are both options, you really don't need this section here because your system already will know who they are and will pick up that information. But let's say you're sending a link out, or you're going to use a link at a live game, or you're embedding a game into a course, then you might want to turn on registration and you can decide what fields, what information you want to collect from the learner. So do you want their name, first name, last name, maybe their email, or maybe you want to know what country they're in or what department or what team. And that way you can also segment the data by groups. So that's a fun way to look at data as well. So here we have just leaderboard information. Now this is the actual set of Jeopardy from Culver City, California. And because you have a lot of, all the content you're inputting in here is customizable, you also have the ability to customize the content that, how many categories do you want? Just 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 categories? What do you want to name your categories? And what questions and how many questions do you want to put under each category? So this happens to be just a sample game on 80s pop culture. And these are the categories. Now, let's say I click on TV and movies for 200. Well, here's an example of a question where we decided to show a visual clue before the question. So here we have an image. Remember, it could be a video, and then it disappears. And then the actual question would pop up for the learner. And in this case, it happens to be a multiple choice. These red bars signify the timer. You, as the builder, get to decide how much time you want to give the learners for each question. And then if they get it right, they'll hear Johnny Gilbert's voice. He's the guy from the TV show that says, "This is Jeopardy." He voices our game as well. So he'll say like, "That's correct," or "I'm sorry." I forgot to mention, we also have the official Jeopardy music from the TV show, the do, 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 do. That's in the game. There's also daily doubles. So when someone lands on a daily double, they will have to wager some money against that question. And if they get it right, they earn the money. And if they don't, they get it wrong. So this is, when it comes to feedback, you could just have the learners see that they got it right or wrong, or you could give them some additional feedback. So in this case, this is basically what we call like text-based feedback. Now, let's say you want to go above and beyond and give them even more rationale or context about this previous question. Here's another example. So you could show more pictures, you could show a video, you could show more text, and so forth. And then the learner would just keep going. Now, if you're using Jeopardy in a solo e-learning experience, the learner can click around and answer these questions in whatever order you want. But this game in particular has an additional mode that we call ILT mode. So if you're on your Zoom calls or team calls, or you're in person and you want one of the trainers or a meeting facilitator to kind of play that Alex Trebek host role, that person would be able to run the game live so that every single member of your audience will participate by answering from their own personal devices. So let's picture you have 50 people or 100 or 200 people in a room or on a Zoom call together. When the question pops up, every single person will look at their own device and place the answer that they think is correct. And their answers will be automatic. So the host of the game will immediately know who got it right, who got it wrong, how fast they answered, and it will tally the results too. So if it's important for you to know that, 99 out of 100 people in that game got a question wrong, well, that's a big red flag, right? That would be an opportunity for the host to say, hang on a second, we're not moving forward to the next question because way too many of you got this wrong. Let's talk about it. Let's fix it. Let's make sure all of you understand what the correct answer should have been, and then they can move on. So a lot of these games give you the opportunity to course correct during that experience, which is really fun. Okay, so I'm going to go out of Jeopardy for now and get back into some of these other games. I'll show you trivia. Trivia is a really popular game too. It's very easy to build, very easy to play. But you have in Jeopardy, you only have multiple choice and multi-select questions. In trivia, you could do in Jeopardy, you have multiple choice and text input. Trivia, you have both of those, plus multi-select, plus polling questions, plus image options. So you can customize the opening screen of the game. You can put whatever content you want, like I said here. You can collect whatever information you want here. And then there's also tutorials. So you have the option of allowing the learner to review how the game works before they begin or not, or they can skip it if you do turn it on. And so here we go. So here's your first question. If you want to associate an image next to it, it could look something like this. If you didn't, then this question would just kind of, rearrange across the top. Here are your possible choices. You could have only 2 or 3, up to 5 answer choices. And then when the learner puts in their answer, if they get it right or wrong, they'll get specific feedback. So in this case, you could see, no, I didn't get it right. Here's some feedback for me. And then the question would go on. Now, maybe this next one happens to be a multi-select, and then I got it right. Different games are scored differently. In trivia, it's based on accuracy, speed, and streaks. The more questions you get right in a row, the better. Trivia is another game that has that additional mode for ILT. So if you want to do run a trivia game live with tons of people playing at the same time, you can do that with trivia as well. So I'm going to take a moment now to move over to arcades. And again, I know I didn't get through the 9 other games, but I just wanted to make sure we have enough time. This is what we call an arcade. And for all intents and purposes, what an arcade is really a gamified learning environment. So let's say I'm going to use new employee onboarding for a moment. Let's say your company just hired 50 new employees, and in the first month of their job, you needed them to get kicked off very successfully. You might have a lot of important information for them to see, right? You might have videos for them to watch, PDFs for them to read, could be PowerPoints, could be Storyline or Rise courses for them to take, Lectora courses. It could be links to websites. Really, any kind of content can be ingested inside of an arcade. So what you would do is you would build an arcade and fill it with all that different content, and then you would invite the select group of learners to this arcade. The idea behind this being gamification is that every time a learner comes into the arcade and they click on a particular activity, they're going to earn some points based on how well they perform. So this is the learner view. Pretend that I'm one of your employees and I come into the arcade today and I could see my name, what level I've gotten to. I could see my cute little avatar, which at the moment is a dog, but if I felt like, changing to something else, I could do that. It's showing me my personal progress. So I'm at 78% accuracy across all the content I've reviewed in here. This is how much experience points I've earned, games played, challenges won. I'll talk to you about that in a second. Achievements, which I'll tell you about, and leaderboards. So when you build out an arcade, the idea is that you could either let your learners click around and play different games or experience other content in the order that you've designed this, or you have the option of also designing a learning journey or a mission for them, which is really kind of forcing the learners to experience the content in the order that you want. So again, remember, let's pretend this is a new employee onboarding. They click on this journey, and this journey happens to have 8 stages. Now, these have check marks on them because I've already done it, but let's pretend I'm a learner who comes in here for the very first time. These would all have a lock symbol on it, which means that it's a gated experience that forces the learner to begin down at the bottom of the mountain. And when they open up the first stage of their journey, they will see a certain number of activities. You might just have 1 activity in here, or 2 or 3 or 10, however many you want. However you've designed this, they will have to experience those activities in the order you've designed it. So let's say the first thing you want them to do is review a PDF. So here's an example of a PDF on the history of VLB learning. And I only put this in here to show you that a PDF looks like any old PDF when you load it in, right? So the learner would roll through however many pages you have in your PDF, And then once they're done with that activity, they'll get a check mark that this activity's been completed. When that's done, it will unlock the next activity. So they have to experience this the way in the order you've designed it. So let's say the next activity happens to be a video. Okay, great. You can ingest MP4 files or YouTube or Vimeo links in here as your videos. So then I won't keep playing that, but the learner will watch the video all the way to completion. They'll then move on to the next thing. So in this case, it's a game. So let's pretend for a minute that you ingested a storyline course. And the first thing you wanted them to do was review the course, then watch a video, then look at a PDF, and then maybe play a game as the assessment piece. You can do that. Once the learner has gone through however many activities you've put inside stage one, and you can, name this whatever you want to do, like week one of, new employee onboarding or something, right? Once they finished all of this, they will earn some additional XP towards the overall points they're accumulating. And then they will unlock stage two. And stage two can be a whole different group of activities. Doesn't matter how many activities you have in here. And at some point, they'll make their way all the way up through the rest of the journey. Now, we all know people are busy at work. So if someone comes into the arcade and they only have 10 minutes to spend, no problem. The next time they come in, they'll know exactly where they left off and they can keep going from there. So that's what a journey is. And a mission is similar. A mission is kind of like a journey, but it's not a multi-stage experience. It's kind of like a one-stop shop where you're grouping activities together that they still have to do in order. But once they're done with the mission. Now, there's some really fun elements in here when it comes to gameplay. People can play the games alone. They can play where they have a one-on-one game battle against another colleague, or you can have team game competitions. So I'll quickly show you what that looks like. Let's say I click on this Wheel of Fortune game. Well, I can see that I've already played it, and this is my score and my knowledge and where I fall on the leaderboard. So, okay, cool. Maybe I don't want to play again to beat myself. But what if I want to challenge somebody else to play against me? Then all I have to do is click this challenge button, and all of the names of the other people who were invited to this particular arcade will show up here. So now let's say I want to challenge Julie. I click on Julie's name, I hit play, and what'll happen is the Wheel of Fortune game will launch right now and let me play. It does not mean that Julie is going to be here playing against me at this moment. It just means that I've challenged her. So I'm going to hit start. I'm going to play the game. I'm going to get the best score I can get. And then at some point, Julie will see that she has been challenged. And a battle tile will appear on her arcade. So here's an example of a different game where Katie challenged me to this diversity in the workplace game. You can see I haven't played her yet, but once I'm ready to play her, I know what score I need to beat. And then once both people have played, there'll be a notification that shows up here in the notification section that shows the outcome to both players. So in this case, here's a different game. I lost to Julie. So that's a really fun way to have, people competing against each other. You can have multiple competitions going on with different people. And if you want to have team game competitions, you can do that too. So if I click on this team game, for example, the first time I come into a team game, there'll be a drop-down menu showing me my team. So let's just say I pick London, for example. I hit next. And if other people had played before I got here, there'd be a snapshot showing me the leaderboard for my team, how the teams are doing stacked up against each other, and how I'm doing. Then I would hit play and I'll play alone. Just because it's a team game, it doesn't mean I'm actually playing against other people and they all have to be here with me at the same time. It just means that we're all going to play individually, and however we perform affects our team leaderboard. So that's a fun option. Now, because we're running out of time, I want to make sure to get to the back end. So I want to show you what the backend looks like. If you were to set up a free trial, and by the way, we offer demos and free trials of the platform if anyone's interested, you'd be able to come into the backend. You would click on New Game. You would decide what game you want to build. So let's just say, for example, I'm going to build a trivia game. And then you would go about putting in your content. Now, the first section of every game is always going to take you all of 2 or 3 minutes. So things like, what do you want to name the game? Let's say we call this ATD, 2024, right? You name it whatever you want, and boom, it populates into the URL. That's your URL. You could decide what language you want because we support global companies. So there's 20 languages available. You set timers, you set pass fails, all different things like that. You can put messaging in the game. This is where you determine your authorization and what info you want to collect from them. And then the second part would be where you're putting in your content. Now, very recently, I think last week, we just released generative AI inside the trivia game. So you could either go in and click add question and plug in your questions one by one. You could decide what question type you want. You type your question here. You put your possible answer choices in here, mark which one is correct. And then, you could put your feedback in. But let's say you want to generate questions with AI, then you simply go over here. And by the way, this is a feature, if your company is absolutely against this, it can be shut off. but you can put your question in here. Like, let's see, write me 10 questions about the impact of New Orleans music. Whoop, I spelled that wrong. Music on the world, something like that, right? And then I would say, well, how many, what kind of questions do I want them to be? I'm going to have 5 of those and a couple of these and, whatever. And then you would just generate them. I'm not going to do it now because it'll take a minute or two to generate. And then you can decide if you like them, you keep the ones you like, and you get rid of the ones you don't want. So that's a new feature in here. We also have the ability to handle translations. And then when you're done building a game, I'm just going to get out of here for a second. Here, I'll just click on this since it's the first game. When it's time to actually publish your game out to your learners, you're going to click on publish and you're going to decide, do I want it to be a SCORM package that I'm downloading and putting in my LMS? Do I want to take this link and email it to people? Do I want to create a QR code from it? Do I want to drop it as a web object into my courses? Maybe I want to create an iframe or something and it'll pop out an embed code for you. So there's a lot of options for you to do that. I promise you it's really easy to do. And I know we're running out of time. I wanted to show you all data, but I don't know if we have the time to do that. So I'm going to take a pause and ask Alexandria how we're doing.
Yeah, we only have one question so far, whether or not this is GDPR approved.
Yes, absolutely GDPR approved. We follow all of the data privacy across the globe. We've got our data processing agreement that goes along with this for anyone who's using it in, regions that require that and all that good stuff, and California and everything like that. So yes.
That's our only question. So I say, let's see the data.
All right, let's look at data real quick. So when you go to look at data, like I said, it's I'm spelling this wrong. It's real time. The minute one person plays, you'll be able to see the data. So I'm going to pull up this game. It happens to be old, but that's only because I love the data in here. So you'll notice there's nothing to see, but that's because the data automatically defaulted to the last 30 days. But you can change that. You can look at data for a period of time, a day, week, month, year, whatever. So if I switch this to all time, you'll see that it updates. And you can export this if you want into a CSV or Excel file. We also have APIs if your team wanted to pull some data into your systems. We're also XAPI ready if you have a learning record store. But if you're looking at the data from within the dashboard, you can look at it in 3 sections. So this is for single game data. It's going to show you for this particular game, how many people played, average score, sessions, completed sessions, average time spent per session, what was the average accuracy. And this was a really hard game on US tax trivia, so that's why this is so low, but hopefully you'll never see a number that low. So that's your kind of overview. Then it goes into your player stats. So it'll show you your top 10 players by rank, and then you can dig into the next 10 and the next 10 and so forth if you want. You can sort by all of these. Now, let's say I want to look into a particular learner. So this learner played 6 times. This was their average time spent, dates and times they played, how long it took them, score, question amount, accuracy, and completion. And the reason I love this data is because you could see that the first time this person played, how long it took them, they only got 30% accuracy. And they weren't happy with that. So a couple of minutes later, they played again. They got faster, better score, improved a little bit, still not super happy. So they played again and then got up to 80%. They could have stopped there, but this person obviously decided they want to keep going. So if you add up this short amount of time, 7 or 8 minutes here, they were able to master the content. And the reason why that's important is because games really do make learning fun. And this person was willing to put in the time to actually get better. You'll be able to look at it question by question to see which questions they got wrong and right. If you export the data, you'll see way more than you even see on the dashboard. Not only will you know they got it right or wrong, but you'll know which answer they selected. So if a lot of people are selecting the same wrong answer, that'll shine a light. And then lastly, down here is your question stat, which is your aggregate data. So if there's a particular question that you notice too many people are getting wrong, this is where that data will really shine a light on what the issues are. And when it comes to the arcade, and I know we're at the last second here, if you want to look at data for an actual full arcade, so for example, if you want to look at data for this entire experience here, and by the way, I forgot to mention, you can export or download this entire arcade as one SCORM file and load that as one piece of content into your LMS. You could put your courses in the arcade, or you could put the arcade in your LMS. So just know you've got flexibility. You can also have SSO to access an arcade or direct registration. But to look at data for an arcade, you're going to have tons of data points up here showing you how each player did, how much time they spent, how the leaderboards are shaping up with, all the learners. And my favorite one is this one. What were the hardest questions? What were the, most replays? So you're going to get a lot of great usage information to understand how far did people get in journeys and what they, struggled with, and hopefully how their successes were. And I'm just going to stop there. Thanks, everybody.
Yay, great. Well, thank you so much, Jamie. I dropped your email into the chat for folks, and I think we got to a couple of questions. And I know that your team can help reach out for any that we didn't get to today. Thank you so, so much. And huge thank you to ELB Learning for sponsoring today's demo. And thank you to all of our attendees for your great questions and engagement. Hope to see you at another future ATD webinar or demo. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks, everybody.